Josh Hennig back with you. Football Fridays. Of course, we have been doing this for years. Of course, originally on 97.3 ESPN FM, but we are live on YouTube and X. Thanks to our friends over at Tropicana Atlantic City, the brand new Gridiron Pit, and of course, all sports betting odds presented by Caesars Sportsbook. I am Josh Hennig back here. Like, subscribe, share it with your friends. So, for those who are new to the show, if you're watching on YouTube or X, thank you for watching. This is the deal. Friday nights, we do this August through January. We do the picks. We go through the schedules. Obviously, we are in the heavy heart of the football season. We do a little recap of what happened last week. We get into what is in this week. So we do a little accountability check. We do a review of the games, and we bring it all to you. I've been doing this since 2018. The picks. College football, NFL, Football Fridays are now live on my YouTube and X. So I got the papers here. I got all the documentation. So before we give you the picks, just a really quick hit. Yes, Jeff from Ocean City checking in. We will be live at yesterday's in Marmora tomorrow for the regular Hanging with Hennig show on 97.3 ESPN, streaming live on YouTube and X. I do have a couple items to give away tomorrow. I will be giving away an Eagles t-shirt. It's from the NFL shop, as well as a couple of Caesars Sportsbook hats. So, come on out. Come on and hang out with us tomorrow at yesterday's in Marmora. All right. That is that. Also, next Saturday, I will be at Margate Fun Fest. So, tomorrow, Saturday the 20th, I will be at yesterday's Creekside Tavern Marmora. Next Saturday, I'll be at Margate Fun Fest. So 2 straight weeks, we are out on the road, all right, with the show, Hanging with Hennig. But Football Fridays are always here in the 97.3 ESPN studio. Full disclosure, I wanted to do this show earlier tonight, but I probably spent more time than I should have consuming caffeine, and now I got my tea here. So, probably spent more time than I should have going through my notes and double checking, triple checking the numbers, but I take this seriously. Okay? That's why we track the numbers. So, last week in college football, we went 7-3. In the NFL, we went 6-4. I think the couple things we learned from last week with the football picks is I am done with Iowa State. I'm done with the spread. I'm done with the number. I'm done with the everything. I am not touching them anymore. They are too unpredictable of a team. You know, for a team that's coached by such a great program builder in Matt Campbell, he's got a roster of players right now that from week to week, they're like Jekyll and Hyde. So now I don't know if part of that is people saw the first 2 weeks and kind of started figuring them out, or maybe I just don't have a grasp on who they are. But we are staying away from Iowa State the rest of the year. Also, I think Oregon had a letdown game last week. I'm not going to let what happened last week dictate for the rest of the year. I still think Oregon is one of the best teams in college football. I still think they're a high-powered offense. It's still very, very good. But I think that them unable to cover the spread at Notre Dame is an example of a team that had their first road game. And you're going to find out through these picks today with the college football that I take resume very seriously in running my numbers, running my metrics, putting together these sheets. Because I noticed last week that in college football, the teams that had not gone on the road before or who had not been tested before, it really came back to bite them. And you're seeing it today in the Tulsa game. Oklahoma State's just not that good. And, you know, I was talking with a couple of the guys earlier on the Sports Bash, Mike Gill on 97.3 ESPN, that I liked Tulsa tonight because I think Oklahoma State's just not a good team, and Tulsa's much better than they were last year. Right now, the last time I checked, Tulsa was winning. I think it was 19-3. So let me double check, see what the score is now. Yeah, still 19-3. I mean, they're covering a 10-point spread pretty easily right now. So that's what we learned last week in college football, that, you know, Iowa State, I just have trouble picking them. I just can't pick them anymore. And if I go through all of, you know, what I got right and what I got wrong, And again, we'll get to the full picks. College football, week 4. NFL, week 3. I got a ton of picks to get to, so I don't want to spend too much time dwelling on last week. But the reason why the NFL picks were 7-5, not 6-4, 7-5, is because the biggest takeaway from last week in the NFL is some of these teams that we thought were going to be better are really struggling out the gate. And this gets back to the whole conversation of, is a team better than you thought? Are they worse than you thought? Or do they need 3-4 weeks to figure it out because they'll play the preseason anymore? It's probably a combination of all the above. Because I was so wrong about the Bears. Okay, this is now 2 straight weeks I've gotten the Bears wrong. Ben Johnson, he don't got the magic formula. That is still a flawed roster. That is still a flawed team. And let's be realistic. Caleb Williams, he's still got a lot of growing and developing to do. So, but guess what we got right? Because again, when you go 7-5 in the NFL, overall in the NFL now, we are 13-9 on the year. So we got to get that number up. That's why I spend so much time going through these numbers. In the past, our NFL is usually somewhere between, 62, 63% over the years. But what we got right was the Patriots. This is now multiple weeks in a row that we've gotten the Patriots right. It's now multiple weeks in a row we've gotten the Jags right. So there are some of these teams we understand. And speaking of the Eagles, we'll dig deeper into the Eagles-Rams game a little bit later. The Eagles' defense is obviously good. And it's not just because the Chiefs' offense is limited and the Cowboys don't have a running game. But I do think that in the NFL, what you're learning early on is the teams that have the defensive personnel to shut down other teams, they are the ones that are getting out in front. Meanwhile, in college football, it really does matter who you play. Like in the NFL, everyone's like, you look what the Panthers did last week with the Cardinals, right? The Panthers made the Cardinals sweat at the end of that game. And we lost that pick, by the way. 0-2 with the Cardinals. Notice I don't have the Cardinals on this sheet today. But in college football, your resume does matter. Who you play, it really does matter. And we saw last week, going as we did, 7-3, as I mentioned, Oregon's first road game didn't go as we thought it was going to. Iowa State, we're done with them. We can't get them right. But what did we get right? Arkansas, Tailgate Green. Tailgate Green's a really good quarterback, okay? We barely hit the under on the Pitt, West Virginia game by a point. But we got the over in Georgia, Tennessee. And by the way, Penn State is now 0-3 against the spread on the year. I never in my wildest dreams would have thought that would have been the stat to start the year. But there it is. So, all right, let's get to this week's picks. Don't forget, all odds and numbers are being brought to you by Caesars Sportsbook, the only sportsbook that gives you Caesars rewards, like earning points for hotel stays like at Tropicana Atlantic City. Download the app, use my promo code Radio20X for your opportunity for up to 20 free bets. For new users only. For more information, check out the promos information section at CaesarsSportsbook.com. If you or someone you know has a gambling problem, please call 1-800-GAMBLER. This is an information show. This is not I got secret information, okay? I'm here to help educate you guys on the NFL, okay? And by the way, Jeff is 100% correct. Listen, there's a reason why I stopped giving out Rutgers picks over the years, okay? Because if you're in New Jersey, you can't bet on Rutgers. Like you couldn't bet, remember Seton Hall? I knew people when St. Peter's. So remember St. Peter's a couple years ago won the MAC tournament in Atlantic City. Then they made that deep run in the NCAA tournament. I knew people who drove across the bridge to Pennsylvania to wager on St. Peter's during that entire run. People would text me, do you think they're going to cover? Yes or no? And they would drive across the bridge, place their bets, come back to New Jersey. That's how stupid and how frustrating this thing is, because people can literally make money. And I'm not advocating that you should be using sports betting as a money-making resource. But listen, you have better odds if you're going to spend your disposable income, okay? I know everyone doesn't have disposable income, okay? Listen, I'm not out here spending money all over the place myself, okay? We all got bills to pay. But if you are someone who has disposable income, this is my rant for the day. If you have disposable income, you are more likely to win money with the numbers and the analysis and the analytics that goes when it comes to the sports books, than you are with the lottery, than you are playing roulette, than you are playing the slots at the casino. So if you like throwing your money away, or do you like to just throw a couple bucks on the game, win some extra money, maybe go buy your significant other something special. What we're all about here. But it's also about football, okay? Because I love football. So let's get to the picks. I've rambled enough, okay? All right. College football. We are 25-13 on the year. 25-13 is a pretty good number, all right? We're going to try to make that number better this week. And again, like, subscribe, share with your friends. At Josh Hennig on X. At Josh Hennig on YouTube. We are streaming in the Dr. Squatch virtual studios. Use my Dr. Squatch link, and you have the opportunity to save $10 on your next order. Or you have the chance to get free soap bars added to your order. But you got to use the link. Let's start in the Big Ten. And we're not starting with Penn State. Sorry, Jeff, I should say. We're not starting with Penn State. We are starting with another group of Big Ten teams that are, shall we call it, interesting. Maryland plus 10 at Wisconsin. So Maryland this year is averaging 34 points a game. They're going against a Wisconsin team with a quarterback who has thrown 4 interceptions in the last 3 games. I have zero faith in Wisconsin's offense. And it's not just because they got basically punted to the curb by Alabama last week. I have no faith in them because of the fact that when you have a quarterback who is supposed to be this highly recruited prospect in O'Neal, how on earth are you letting this guy put you in impossible situations week in and week out? Wisconsin has not dominated any of relevance. Maryland is a team that's averaging a lot of points per game. So when you have a team averaging a lot of points per game, I tend to lean for the cover plus 10. I'm not saying Wisconsin doesn't win, but I'm just saying that Maryland doesn't get blown out. Staying in the Big Ten, Michigan at Nebraska. Now, this is one of those games where I genuinely feel like the odds makers don't understand Michigan. I think that a lot of people keep giving Michigan opportunities time and time again, and there's no reason to. I think Underwood is a year away from being a year away. There, I said it. He's still a very, very raw prospect as a quarterback. I ran the numbers. My numbers say this is going to be a Nebraska 32-22 game. I think Dominic Raiola, remember, he's got 8 touchdowns and 0 interceptions this year. This Cornhusker offense is averaging 49 points a game. I don't see a scenario where Michigan is going to be able to keep in this game for very long. I like Nebraska to cover the 2.5 points at home. A lot of public money is going to Michigan. Keep that in mind, okay? When the public goes one way, you run the other way. You'll hear that note again a little bit later in the conversation here. But I like that. I also like Nebraska over the team total of 23.5 points. Again, my projections with my formula has Nebraska scoring 32 points in this game. Well, that is almost 10 points over the team total. So Nebraska to cover the spread, Nebraska over the team total. And again, when you have a quarterback who has 8 touchdowns and no interceptions on the year, What am I afraid of when it comes to Michigan? And I think Michigan's defense learned the hard way at Oklahoma that they are good in terms of talent, but they're not great. So this is going to be a game that the over-under you stay away from. And I see you, 40 kid. Yes, you can hit the rewatch button later. Every show is archived live on my YouTube channel at Josh Hennig. I appreciate you tuning in. I will get to all your messages a little bit later as we go through the picks. Okay? But yes, what do you have here? Texas plus 1.5, Chargers money line. I can say I love the Chargers money line. Texans, we'll get into that a little bit later because I got some questions about Houston. All right, back to the college football picks. Let's go to the ACC. Syracuse plus 17.5 at Clemson. Now, some of you might be saying, come on, Josh, it's at Clemson. Well, Syracuse already had what is, in matter of fact, a road game this year. That neutral site with Tennessee, they should have covered the spread in that game. They missed it by basically 2 points. So, I think Clemson is struggling right now. You have a Syracuse offense that has scored at least 26 points in all 3 games this year. Clemson's offense has struggled to score in general. So why on earth, why would I ever think Clemson is going to blow them out? Clemson can win the game by 10 to 14 points and you still cover this number. 17.5 is way too much for a Clemson team that doesn't really have an identity at this point. So Syracuse plus 17.5. Let's go down south, SEC, Tulane at Ole Miss. So one of my favorite college football stories is Jake Retzlaff. Jake Retzlaff, the former BYU quarterback. It's a whole wild story about why he left BYU, why he's at Tulane. Well, since he got to Tulane, he has led that offense averaging 30 points a game. And now they're going against the Ole Miss defense that is allowing 29 points a game against SEC opponents, Kentucky and Arkansas. Now, Arkansas and Kentucky, they don't have Jake Retzlaff. Don't get me wrong. Green is going to be a very good quarterback, Arkansas. But Kentucky doesn't have no Retzlaff. If you're allowing that many points against those teams, Tulane should be able to score against you. Plus 11.5, Tulane on the road, down in Ole Miss territory. I'm not too worried about it. Retzlaff, a veteran quarterback, he'll be fine. Let's go back to the ACC. NC State plus 3.5 at Duke. Now, this is one of those games where I was kind of waffling back and forth between whether I want to just go team total NC State or go cover the spread. I tend to think it's both. And here's why. Number one, CJ Bailey is a future NFL draft prospect. He's a redshirt freshman. I think is it a redshirt? No, it's a redshirt sophomore. Sorry. He's a future NFL prospect. He has got this Wolfpack offense scoring points in bunches this year. Duke's defense is one of the worst in college football. Duke's defense is allowing 32 points per game. NC State's offense is almost averaging 32 points a game. So I got 2 picks on one game because my projected score for this game is 31-27 NC State over Duke. So I have NC State winning the game outright according to my projections. So they should at least cover the 3.5. And I like the over 28 points team total for NC State. So I'm loving the Wolfpack against a Duke team with a horrible defense. Yes, Jeff, a Florida-Miami pick is coming. You know what? Just for Jeff's sake, we'll give it right here. Got to give the people what they want here. Football Friday show presented by Tropicana Atlantic City. Don't forget about the Gridiron Pit, the ultimate wager and watch experience with high-definition TVs, table games right in front of the TVs, and, of course, a tailgate-style menu of food. Of course, it's right next to Chickies and Pete's in Tropicana Atlantic City. Of course, you can bring food over from Chickies. to sit and watch the games and wager and watch at the Gridiron Pit inside Tropicana Atlantic City. I love when I get alerts on my laptop that I do not need. I'm doing this all myself, guys. I'm not saying this to brag, but a lot of people in this world, they got producers, they got research teams, they got camera guys. It's just me, folks. I'm doing my best here. All right. You want Florida, Miami? I like Miami to cover 7.5 points. And here's why. The Hurricanes got a top 30 offense in almost every category in college football. They're averaging 13 points per game against. And after DJ Lagway threw 5 interceptions last week, 6 in the last 2 games. They threw interceptions against South Florida as well. So if Lagway is throwing interceptions against LSU, very good defense, USF, okay defense, what do you think he's going to do against Miami? Miami's going to own this game. I was watching, there were a couple of reports on television earlier today about what the vibe is like down there. The Miami fans are going to come out going wild in this game. It's going to be a crazy atmosphere. So I like Miami cover 7.5. I think that Mario Cristobal realizes that he's got a real team now. He's got a real team that can really hang with the big boys. And I think Carson Beck he's finally realizing his potential as a quarterback. He was a guy that years past, when people said, oh, he's a draft prospect, I was like, I don't see it. Now I see it. Maybe it's just like Bo Nix. Maybe he just needs more time to build his craft and get better. Maybe that's just all it was for him. All right, how many picks we got left? We got a couple more picks in the college football, and then we get to the NFL. South Carolina at Missouri. Lenore Sellers has been cleared to play in the game. That's big news for this game. This number has been waffling all week. In fact, as soon as the Lenore Sellers news came out, the spread actually moves 2 points. That gives you an idea what the odds makers think of this quarterback. This quarterback is worth at least 2 points for South Carolina. They were 11.5-point dog. Now they're a 9.5-point dog. It's actually 3 points in certain books, but we stick with Caesar's Sportsbook. The only sports book where you get Caesar's rewards that you can use at my friends at Tropicana Atlantic City. Back to the picks. Lenore Sellers is that important to this game, which is why I think it's going to be a little higher scoring. You saw the offense struggle last week without him at South Carolina. They got beat down by Vandy. I think this is going to be a high-scoring game. I think that Sellers is going to get this offense moving on Saturday. Not greatly, but he'll get them to probably 20 points. My projected score for this game actually was 34-19. So, obviously, if you take the analytics out of it, it's probably more like a 35-20 score. That is way over the 40.5 in this game. So, I like South Carolina at Missouri over 48.5. I think these quarterbacks are going to put up some points. All right. We got 2 more college football picks to go, and then we'll get to the NFL slate. I love the college games this week. I know there's no Penn State. Okay. Penn State's going to bye, Jeff. I get it. But, I still think it's a good slate of games this week. I'm very fascinated. Very, very intrigued. CC, very intrigued. Illinois at Indiana. I am not a believer in Indiana, and I'm not going to let the Kennesaw State game sway me from what my eyeballs tell me, which is Indiana was very fortunate to have the record they had last year. I don't think they're that much better than they were last year. Is the quarterback better? Absolutely. But the quarterback doesn't solve every single problem. Illinois has played much better competition this year. While Indiana has played 3 straight home games against an easy slate. Kennesaw State, Indiana State, Old Dominion. I mean, come on. Who's impressed with that schedule? Illinois went on the road and dominated Duke and Durham. Just BTA'd all up on them. And the final score to tell the whole story because basically Illinois put almost all their starters from the game and Duke scored on the backups. Okay? So again, this is why watching the game is important. Analytics is not everything. Numbers don't tell all the story. But here is the number that's very important in this game. This line opened at Illinois 4.5. It has moved to 6.5. A lot of public money is jumping to Indiana. 75% of the public money is pounding the Hoosiers. What I tell you guys earlier, and I've been telling you this since 2018, when the public runs one way, you have to question it. You have to look at it and say, that doesn't make sense. That is not something I want to be a part of. And guess what? If everyone's jumping off a cliff, are you going to do it too? No, of course you're not. You are going to take Illinois plus 6.5. When the public money is going to Indiana, who's played an easy slate of games, I'm taking Illinois. Brett Bielema has some tough dudes. He has got some big boys on the offensive line. That's his strength. Brett Bielema is great at recruiting offensive and defensive linemen. And I'm looking at this game and saying, Illinois' offensive line is much better than Indiana's defensive line. Now, Indiana still has some talent on defense. Okay, I'm not ignoring that, but it's not all concentrated on the D line. It's spread out over the defense. So give me Illinois to cover the 6.5 at Indiana. Finally, one more Big Ten game. Probably the most Big Ten game I've ever picked. Michigan State at USC. USC's offense has been electric this year. Now, I don't think they're an invincible offense, but they're going against a Michigan State team that is allowing 23 points a game and gave up 40 against Boston College. And Boston College is nowhere as good as offensively as USC is. I love the USC over team total. Now, I know for some of you are like, wow, Josh, 37.5, that's a lot of points to go. Well, when I ran my numbers, when I ran my projections, I got USC winning the game 39-25. So in my mind, I look at this game and I say, USC is going to score at least 39. It'll probably be more like 42-45. Probably by the end of the night, the final score is probably something like 45-20. So I like the USC over team total. The reason why I like the spread is because these are the kind of games where you have to sit back and be like, I don't know if you're going to pull these starters out, backdoor cover at the end of the game. And that's always the worst part. You, as a football fan, you never want to be the guy rooting for someone else's demise, right? You never want to watch a game and you see the young kid who's never played a game the entire year get into the game and be like, don't score, because, you know, that might be the only time that guy ever plays in a blowout situation. And then he scores, and you're like, you feel like a dirtbag because you're rooting against a kid's success. You know what I mean? Like, it's just so wild. You never want to be that guy. Nobody wants to be the guy who roots for somebody else's demise. Okay, I don't want to be that guy. So I try to stay away from games that are backdoor covers. We've actually lost 2 games this year. 2 out of the 13. No, 3. Hold on. 1, 2. 3 out of the 13 games were losses because of backdoor covers. So, again, what do we learn? Stay away from the backdoor cover, especially in college football. All right? Let's go to the NFL. Week 3 in the NFL. We are 13-9 on the year. We got to bump that number up, okay? 7-5. It's okay. It's not great. We want to do better. So I ran the numbers. Again, this show is starting very late because I double-checked the numbers this time. You're not just learning. I'm learning. This is a learning process. We're in this together since 2018, folks. Well, at least some of you have been with me since 2018. Some of you more recently, which, welcome everybody. Josh Hennig, hanging out with you. Hang with Hennig is tomorrow from 12 to 3 on 97.3 ESPN, streaming live on YouTube and X in the Dr. Squatch virtual studio. Football Friday shows. Every Friday night, we give you the rundown of the college football and the NFL slates. We just did the college football. Let's flip over to the NFL. If you miss any of the picks, any of the previews, just hit the rewind button on YouTube or X. You can watch the show from the very beginning. All right. We are going to go with the Eagles game. I got to pick for the Eagles game. That's not what you guys think. I ran the numbers, and every scenario I input in, this is a lower scoring game. I have the Eagles winning this game 21-17. Philadelphia has hit the under in each of their first two games. I think the Eagles defense is way far ahead of the offense right now. And because the Eagles defense is so far ahead of the offense, I think that combined with the Rams having a good defense as well. So I know the Rams are without Witherspoon in their corner, but it's not like the Eagles done a great job at exposing other teams' corners so far this year. I think Philadelphia is going to grind this game out. They're going to get the win in the end. I think it will be a low-scoring game. Not a big game for Jalen Carter because you saw my article on 973 ESPN.com. Starting guard for the Rams, Avila, he is out. He has been ruled out for the game. So now you are shorthanded on the offensive line with Jalen Carter, Jordan Davis, Moro Ajomo, a couple powerful dudes coming at you in the middle of that line. You really think the Rams are going to hold up the whole night? I don't think so. Whole afternoon, I should say. Isn't it crazy this is a 1 o'clock game? This feels like it should be like a 4:25 game or a primetime game. It's a 1 o'clock game. I'll be curious to see what the crowd is like for this game. Because as everybody, if you're an Eagles fan, you know, if you're not going to the game, you get certain people who love the 4:25, certain people love the 1 o'clock. I feel like it's like a different vibe. I've been to both. I felt like the game went to 4:25 was a much more wild crowd. Whereas the 1 o'clock game was much more of like a, hey, we're here for football. Now, again, I haven't been to that many Eagles games. So, I know Jeff knows about this stuff. He says, fans like the 1 p.m. game. All right. Well, hopefully the fans get out there and go nuts. Because we need that. I think people who didn't play sports or haven't been in a lot of sporting environments will understand how important the fans are for these home games. Eagle fans definitely are a point swing in certain scenarios. Like, I think if just use an example. If you're looking at two teams, what is their numbers on a neutral site versus what are their numbers somewhere else? And I think you're going to find more often than not that the numbers at the Eagles' home field is drastically different than the road. All right. And that's typically how I look at it. All right. Just let me double check. Okay, we are good. Oh, well, we're good. Now we are. That was weird. Had to fix the computer. All right. Let's go to next game. Packers at Browns. Green Bay is averaging 15.5 points per game against. They're one of the best defenses in the NFL. The Browns offense has not scored more than 17 points in a game in 2025. Give me the Browns team total under 16.5. I know somewhere Andy McNamara is cringing when I say that, but I think the Packers defense is incredible. Micah Parsons has been a massive game changer for that defense. So I tend to think that the Browns got trouble scoring against the Packers. And when I ran my numbers, for me, this came out to being a 28-14 game for the Packers. So I think the Packers are going to dominate the Browns defensively, offensively. I mean, selfishly, I'm hoping the offense figures it out because I think that Jordan Love is probably one of the greatest success stories in the NFL because he was never supposed to be this good. And I think he can only get better. I think the Packers shut them down. Bengals at Vikings under 42.5. The matchup of the backup quarterbacks going against experienced defensive coordinators. You don't think for 1 minute that Brian Flores is doing this, licking his lips, oh man, I got a young, dumb quarterback in Jake Brown. It's not dumb, but I mean, these coordinators, they love to take advantage of young quarterbacks. And then Carson Wentz. He ain't Carson Wentz anymore. If Kevin O'Connell can get something good out of Carson Wentz, then Kevin O'Connell needs to be coach of the year. Let's be realistic. So I like the under 42.5. My projected score for this game is 23-17. That hits the under. I think it's going to be a lower scoring game. I think both teams will have struggle time scoring offensively. because of their quarterbacks. Also, let's go with another game total. Steelers at Patriots, but we're not going under. We're going over 44.5. Here's why. These are two teams that are dealing with injuries. The Steelers will be without safety Deshaun Elliott and quarterback Joey Porter. Patriots, Christian Gonzalez listed as questionable, but there's a lot of reporting out there that he's actually more likely to be doubtful because it's a hamstring issue, and he is a game time decision on Sunday because of a hamstring issue. And you know how hamstrings work, soft tissue injuries, very, very easy to re-injure that. So both teams without their starting corners, both teams injured right now. And also these are two teams, their defense has been disappointing at times this year. So I like the over 44.5. My actually projected score for this game is 27-24. That's actually 51 points. So I have this being almost a touchdown more than the actual over-under in this game when you run the numbers. Another game that I'm picking a side in, Colts minus 4.5 the Texans. My number projection for this game is 28-16 Colts against a Titans defense. They're just not good, okay? Indy's offense, they're rolling with Danny Diamonds. Not Danny Dimes. Daniel Jones on Danny Diamonds. I don't know what Shane Steichen's doing, but it's working with Daniel Jones. It's amazing to watch. Speaking of quarterbacks, Michael Penix. Give me the over 214.5 passing yards versus the Panthers. Now, Penix is already averaging 216 passing yards a game. So he's actually averaging more than what the odds makers are putting out there on the prop market. The prop bet is 214 passing yards. He's averaging 216 passing yards. This is the Panthers defense that allowed 220 passing yards to Kyler Murray last week. Plus, Carolina, without their best defensive lineman, Tershawn Wharton, is out for the game. So, you're missing your best defensive lineman. Going against quarterbacks is already averaging what you basically allowed to Kyler Murray, who is not a pure pocket passer. I think Penix hits the over on the prop. Penix might be a good streamer if you're doing DFS too, because I think the Panthers defense without the defensive lineman Wharton, that's going to be a huge problem for them in this game. So Penix Jr. over the passing yards. I got 214.5 at Caesars Sportsbook, the only sportsbook offering you Caesars rewards. Next game, we're going to go to the Saints-Seahawks game. I've been so impressed with the Seahawks defense overall. I think their defense has been way better than I expected. I got to project the score of Seattle win this game 23-16. That's why I am going Saints team total under 16.5. Saints traveling on the road to Seattle. That crowd is going to be loud. It's going to be boisterous. You could argue if you were to rank the best, like the list of the best home field advantages, right? Obviously, it's Philadelphia. Obviously, it's Kansas City. And obviously, it's Seattle. Those fans all through those places get nuts. So, I tend to lean to under and the points for the Saints. In fact, the Seattle defense is top 10 in the NFL in points per game against. They're averaging 17 points allowed. So, again, I think the Saints, they probably only score 14. This is probably going to be like a 23-14 kind of game. But the Seahawks are bottom 10 defensively in a specific category. Passing yards. They will be without two safeties on Sunday. The rookie, Nick Emenwari, as well as starter Julian Love. Also, Devin Witherspoon, their cornerback, he's dealing with a knee issue. He is doubtful for the game, which opens the door for South Jersey's own Juwan Johnson. Now, Juwan Johnson is already averaging 62.5 receiving yards a game. Seattle's defense is averaging 51 receiving yards per game against by tight ends this year. Juwan Johnson leads the Saints in targets, catches, and yards. He is Spencer Rattler's number one target. I feel like the 42.5 receiving yard prop is a really good prop to take. And if you're playing fantasy football and you haven't already picked up Juwan Johnson, I don't know what you're waiting for. In fact, I tried to pick him up in one of my fantasy leagues, and I couldn't because I apparently had hit the maximum number of tight ends you could have. And so by the time I went to try to get him again later, somebody already scooped him up. I missed my opportunity. Got him in one league, didn't get in the other league. Happens. All right, 2 more games to get to and we get out of here. Phillies are losing 2-1 for anybody who cares. Broncos, Chargers. Now, I'm going under 45.5, mostly because I trust the formula. I trust the numbers. That's going to win you more games than anything is my formula. I got this being a 22-20 kind of game. Both teams are going to be without their tight ends, Evan Ingram and Will Dissly. That will restrict the offenses against defenses that are allowing no more than 300 yards per game against this year. These are 2 defenses that have very good talent, but they're going against offenses that are a little shorthanded. 45.5 feels like too high of a number. Give me the under. My projected score for this game is 42 is the total. So that's under 45.5. Cowboys, Bears. I got dual picks on this game. So if it wasn't bad that Chicago's defense, who I mentioned earlier, is horrible. They're allowing the most points per game in the NFL. 39.5. If it's not bad enough, they are bottom 10 in almost every defensive category. They're going against a Cowboys offense that is averaging 30 points a game. Dak Prescott is averaging 274 passing yards a game. And did you know that the last 2 NFC Offensive Players of the Year, Offensive Players of the Week, J.J. McCarthy, the Vikings, Week 1, Jared Goff, the Lions, Week 2. What do they have in common? They both played against the Bears defense. So, Dak Prescott is a great play this week. I like the Dak Prescott over 263.5 passing yards. And I like the Cowboys cover the 1.5 point spread. Finally, this one's easy. I ran the numbers anyway just to see what it would look like. I was just curious. I was like, all right, let's run these numbers through the formula and see what we come up with. Because I was going to pick the over 53.5 anyway in the Lions-Ravens game. I was going to pick it anyway. I was like, it's going to be a high-scoring game. Not good defenses. 2 teams, bottom 10 in the NFL in points per game against. Their points, they get chewed up for points. But I ran the numbers just to double check. Check your homework where you hand it to the teacher. My projected score is 33-30 Lions. Well, that's 10 points over the 53.5. So, unless something crazy happens, I feel pretty comfortable hitting the over in that game. So that is all the picks for this week. Big NFL, big college football slate. Let's get to you guys commenting on the YouTube channel at Josh Hennig. Remember, like, subscribe, share with your friends. Football Friday show every Friday night, August through January. We are here. I'm tired, but I'm still giving you the picks, the energy, and we'll be back at it tomorrow, 12 to 3 p.m. on 97.3 ESPN FM for Hanging with Hennig, streaming live on YouTube and X in the Dr. Squatch virtual studio. So 40 Kid dropped this message a little bit earlier. Let that marinate for a minute. He says, Josh, I like Utah money line tomorrow. Utah money line. So Utah's a little interesting because I saw a stat this week where, so Texas Tech, who Utah's playing, Texas Tech has covered 17 of the last 18 spreads. So 17 of the last 18 games Texas Tech played, they have covered the spread. But Utah at home has covered 11 of the last 12 spreads. So it's a very unstoppable force, immovable object kind of deal going on here with Texas Tech and Utah in terms of the trends. I would say that, anytime Utah is at home, you got to strongly consider them. Utah under Kyle Whittingham has been amazing at home. They have easily been one of the best teams in all of college football at home this year. So I tend to think that's where it's at. That's what I tend to think. So I see you guys talking about the Rutgers. I'm talking about that a little bit earlier. What was the other thing that 40 Kid had? Yeah, he mentioned about the St. Peter's small Jersey schools do so well in the big dance. Was it Fairleigh Dickinson, St. Peter's, Princeton? Yeah, and it's going to happen. They're going to eventually overrule that. And I'm not going to get into politics here because, I stick to sports. I'm not going to know politics, but because as someone who used to work in the news talk space and someone who had to talk about COVID every day when there were no sports on television in April of 2020, I'll tell you right now, a lot of y'all got too many people who agree with you on your timelines because you're being fed a lot of stuff by the algorithm. All right. I'll tell you this when it comes to New Jersey. And again, not to be political, because Jeff Notion is correct. You couldn't bet on UNLV back in the 90s, but they changed that in Vegas. So the problem in New Jersey is twofold. Number one, we would have had sports betting 30 years ago in New Jersey. But then Governor Christine Todd Whitman was very much against it. And she rallied her party, which ironically at the time was Republican, against sports betting. And she did it under the guise that she says, well, the mob is going to run sports betting if we make it legal. And you find out years later that we are actually in a better world now that we're not hiding sports betting, because when you expose something, not to get preachy on everybody, but the Bible says that when anything that is hidden, when it's exposed to the light, okay, when you take something out of darkness and expose light on it, it's going to be put under another level of scrutiny. And we would not have had so many people get caught now because of these sports betting scandals if it wasn't for the legalization and the safeguards we have with sports betting. Now, could you also say, okay, the causality argument, like, would people have been taking those illegal bets, or would people have been trying to manipulate betting numbers if it wasn't legal, if they didn't have the opportunity to do so? And there's arguments being made for that. It's the old idea that, so during the Cold War, it was like, they get nuclear weapons, we get nuclear weapons. We created a deterrent system. If the Americans didn't build a nuclear bomb, would the Russians build a nuclear bomb? Would the Russians have tried to make bigger and better bombs if we didn't make the nuclear bomb first, and if Russia didn't make the nuclear bombs? The cause and effect argument. So I think I understand where people are coming from with that, where it's like, why should we legalize sports betting, or why should we make it, full board because people can do bad things? The problem is people are going to break the law. People are going to do bad things, no matter if it's for or against the law. People have been sports betting for so long, it doesn't even matter anymore. So I tend to think that's how that works. And then what was the other pick the 40 kid had? Jeff says you're mocking number 2 team in the country. I'll mock them all. It's the facts. Penn State's not covered 3 straight games. They couldn't blow out Villanova. They struggled to blow out Nevada. It was the other team that couldn't blow out. Well, that game was weird too, because that was like a driving rainstorm for part of that game too. Because that was whatever game was on September 6th. They couldn't cover the spread on that one either. Not mocking them, just giving the facts. All right, here's 40 kid. Okay, here it is. Here's the one I was looking for. He says Texans plus 1.5, Chargers money line. I do like Chargers money line. I don't know if there's enough value on it. I have to look at the Sportsbook odds again, but the last time I saw it, it was minus 110 was the value on that. And he was watching me long enough here on my YouTube channel at Josh Hennig. Listen to me on 97.3 ESPN. There's the sign. Probably should find a better spot to set this laptop up, but I don't like taking money lines if there's not some juice to it, because it's like if it's minus 120 or if it's minus 150, you're kind of throwing money away. And I tend to look at sports betting as this is not a look. I've been doing this since 2018 now. Okay, we have documented picks since 2018. And my goal with this was always to give out picks for people who love sports and have a little extra disposable income that they're going to use it anyway. So why not listen to my picks? I'll try to help you win some money. I've always been against laying money with the juice. Okay. I'm not interested in being one of these, call my 1-800 number or go to my website or sign up for my service or, these people who, those services are for people who have way more money than I would know what to do with. Okay. They're not for the regular Joe. They're not for guys like you and me. So when I do these picks, I don't like money lines that have a minus next to them. And I'll pull up Caesar Sportsbook right now to see. But I tend not to like money lines that are negative odds because you're not getting enough money back on the return of your investment. So for 40 kids' sake, we're going to pull up the NFL lines again, see if we got any updated odds. So it's the Chargers, Broncos. This is riveting. Yeah. Whoa. That number went up. Chargers now minus 155 at Caesar Sportsbook. Yeah, I'm not looking at that money line. Can we do a same game parlay with that? Let me see here. All right, let's grab the sheet here. I don't usually do this. A 40 kid, I better get a like and a subscribe on the YouTube channel here for doing the extra work here. Let me see here. Where's on this page? It's on this page. Broncos Chargers under 45.5. So I create a same game parlay. Let's pull up that tab. So we go Chargers money line. Is there a chance I can juice this a little bit? Where's the totals? Oh, those are team totals. That's not what I wanted. Oh, boy. I mean, they just give you way too many options on these apps. Here it is, total points. No, those are team totals. I don't want team total. Here we go. So the original number was 45.5. What was my projected score? 22-20. I mean, we could move this to. I went too far. So, and then we go under. Was it 45.5, Josh? 45. I went too far. Man, my fingers are not conducive for this app. So if I put together the Chargers money line with the under 47 points, that's plus 165, 40 kid. So that's where the value is. Okay. Plus 165. You wager 10. You walk away with 6. You walk away with 26. All right. So if you put under, I actually moved the line from 45.5 to 47. So you go under 47 points combined with the Chargers money line. It's plus 165 odds at Caesar Sportsbook. So that's where the Chargers money line does have some value. Now, to your other question about the Texans. The Texans Jags game for me is a no play. So anyone who's watched me or listened to me long enough on 973 ESPN FM One of these days, I'm going to get the point right. It's like a black or red on the roulette roll. I don't know. I'm tired. One more tea here. But it's my I made myself a combination of, so it's green tea, ginseng, and black tea. So I'm all teed up right now, for better or for worse. But here's probably the Texans. So the Texans-Jags game is what I like to refer to as a information game. Every week, I have a handful of games that I will refuse to touch. I don't like the numbers. I don't like the odds. I don't like the teams. And I just watch the game as a learning experience. Like, let me learn about this team. Let me learn about this game. Let me learn who they are. We're going to learn a lot about the Texans and the Jags in this game. Because the Jags, if they win this game, they will be in prime position with the Colts to compete for the division. The Texans, they lose this game, they are starting 0-3. So, and the reason why the Texans are a dog is because the game is on the road. So, 40 kid, I would say that I would not touch the Texans 1.5. That is a watch and see game for me. That is a let's see which Texans team shows up. Does the old CJ Stroud show up in this game? Does the new Trevor Lawrence show up in this game? Does this game become a Nick Chubb game? Do we see a game where Travis Etienne has a breakout game? Or does this become a low-scoring game because the Texans defense is really good? So that's the kind of game we'll look at with that. And yes, Jeff, I know 11 straight home wins for the Birds at the link. By the way, the Eagles have won 16 straight games when Jalen Hurts starts and ends a game. And overall, the Eagles won 17 the last 18 games. So take that for what it's worth. All right. Thanks, everybody, for watching YouTube X. We do this every single night, Football Friday show, right here on my YouTube and my X platforms at Josh Hennig. Like, subscribe, share with your friends. I'll be back tomorrow for Hanging with Hennig, 12 3 p.m. live from yesterday's Creekside Tavern in Marmora. Come on out. We got a NFL Shop Eagles shirt to give away, as well as some Caesars Sportsbook hats and other prizes we'll give away when you play trivia tomorrow. And just come out and hang out with us. We got some great guests coming on the show tomorrow. We'll talk with Gary Myers, the longtime veteran NFL reporter. He's got a new book coming out, the Dynasty Debate, Brady versus Belichick. So Gary's a New York Times bestselling author. We'll get some insights to him about that debate. I started reading the book. It's a very fascinating book because he interviews all kinds of people. You know, Drew Bledsoe, Bill Belichick himself he interviews. He interviewed Tom Brady Sr. He interviewed the Crafts. He interviewed Mo Lewis, the guy who hit Drew Bledsoe out of bounds. And he has this great interview with Devin McCourty that I think is very, very insightful in the book. So also a fantasy football conversation tomorrow. Andy McNamara joins us every week on 97.3 ESPN Fantasy Football Conversation. What should you do without Joe Burrow, without Jane Daniels, without J.J. McCarthy? What are you going to do? Talk about that as well coming up this weekend. And, of course, we also will be joined by Charlotte Barnes. She covered the Phillies for The Athletic. Get her perspective on now the Phillies have clinched the division early this week. And they're finishing up this road trip. And they're down 2-1 in the fourth inning. So we talk to Charlotte tomorrow. We'll get a perspective from her. Like, what is the vibe of this team? What is going on with this team right now as they wrap up the season? And why is Rob Thompson so intent on giving Aaron Nola a shot in the postseason? Because I'm against it. Rob Thompson seems to be like, oh, well, Aaron Nola's a four-starter. He basically said it this week. He said it as kind of like an aside. And he thought nobody would notice. So we'll ask Charlotte about that. So football, Phillies, NFL, Eagles, college football. It's all tomorrow on Hanging with Hennig on 97.3 ESPN, streaming live on YouTube and X. Thanks to everybody for tuning in. Thank you for watching, and we'll be back right here on my YouTube and X tomorrow, 3 p.m. Have a great night, everybody. And remember, if you or someone you know has a gambling problem, please call 1-800-GAMBLER. Sports betting is not meant to be a income avenue. It is not meant to be anything except for just something. If you got a little disposable income, you're going to throw the money away anyway, you might as well throw it on something that will make you some money back. All we try to do here. Football education mixed with sports betting. Josh Hennig, thank you for watching. Have a great night, everybody.